Hey guys, it's Skybird, and I wanted to go ahead and fill you in on progress today. So I had a bit of a fail twice. Yesterday's cast and today's cast both gave me some issues. These are both the first times I'm using acrylic paint to actually pigment my resin, which has given me some success. However, it has also led me to learn that acrylic paint in my brand of resin not only speeds up the cure time, but it greatly reduces the working time of the resin itself. So although I planned on casting 4 masks today, I ended up only actually being able to cast 3. I did not have enough time to work the resin. And on top of that, I think I'm actually going to have problems with at least 2 of those 3 because of bubbles. Because I added more pigment in today than I did yesterday, the resin got much thicker. And you can heat up the resin to thin it out a little bit, but that's really kind of shooting yourself in the foot because heating it up actually speeds up the cure time and the work time again. So although it will thin out the resin for maybe a minute or so, after that it'll thicken right back up and it'll actually get even thicker. So what I think I'm going to do in the future is I'm actually going to try using isopropyl alcohol and seeing if that will mix into the resin to thin it out. There are several things you can add. I've seen isopropyl alcohol. I've seen adding acetone. However, with acetone, I may run into some issues where it could potentially react with the plastic. I don't think that it would because by the time the resin has dried, most of the acetone, if not all of it, should have evaporated or just escaped the solution. The second problem is that it evaporates very quickly. So it may only thin out the resin for a brief amount of time before it just evaporates and thickens back up. Third is that acetone can react with different types of paints, and so it may actually cause trouble with the actual pigment in the casts themselves. So rubbing alcohol should generally be safer for all of those things. It doesn't really react with a lot of paints. It takes longer to dry, though it still evaporates relatively quickly, and it doesn't react with like ABS plastic or anything like that. So much easier option. Both are reasonably cheap. You can get acetone relatively cheap, maybe $15 for a large bottle of it. I don't know the sizes, but I have some for another project. And you can get rubbing alcohol at basically any store, just about, for a decent price. So, next, what I wanted to mention is today I went ahead and cast in Metro Blue. I added more pigment because although this color is basically a perfect match for Lego's dark turquoise, it is slightly more translucent, so it lets a little bit more light through. And although Lego has some masks out there that are a little bit translucent, it's kind of just a hit or miss sort of thing. It's not the quality of the standard of quality that I would personally like. I would like to go as opaque as possible. I understand that resin and plastic are not the same thing. They may not have the exact same opacity, right? But wherever I can make the mask block out light, I want to, if that makes sense. So that said, the reason that the dark turquoise was a little bit of a fail is because it was also thicker. As you can see, some bubbles did form in all 4 of the corners. For me, that's not going to bother me. I'll still use this mask. I think it looks absolutely fabulous, and I can easily put it on display on shelves or use it on Rahi. And it's also nice that the bubbles are basically uniform, so they're roughly the same size and in the same position on all sides, which was just kind of a luck thing. That said, with the dark blue color being even thicker, I do expect to have way more bubbles with it. So hopefully tomorrow or later tonight, I will be able to do another cast and just test that out. We'll see if it goes well or not. That said, the other issue with this dark turquoise specifically is that it's basically the exact same color as the silicone that I'm using, which makes it extremely hard to actually watch for bubbles when trying to look through the silicone itself for like a backlight. So in the future, I think I will move on to a mostly clear or as clear as I can find type of silicone so that I can actually see where bubbles are and kind of where to orient the mask to allow the bubbles to evacuate the mold itself. So other than that, I'm pretty happy with how things are going. I am running 2 silicone experiments right now. One, I'm testing a different brand of oven baked clay. It's not something I bought for this project, so it may have sulfur in it. I don't know, but I'm just going to try it because I have it laying around. Again, it was for another project. I'm also doing a an experiment with a solution of rubbing alcohol and dish soap that I came up with to see if it can work as sort of a liquid two-part release, if that makes sense. There's a specific reason I want to do this. So for a mask like the Huna here, you can see that this mask has very large holes in it. And so when I'm casting this in one part silicone in cut molds or book molds, whatever I end up doing, the silicone is going to go through these holes and it's going to bond there, which means I have to go back in later with a scalpel or an X-Acto knife or something and actually manually separate that, which is difficult. It can lead to problems later on down the road. And it's inevitably, it's more work. What I would like to do is develop a solution where I can essentially make bubbles in those areas. Currently, what I would recommend doing is using a piece of clear tape and basically closing off those holes manually. And that does work. It creates a physical barrier for the silicone so it can't touch there. But what's the problem is even though tape is very thin, it's still technically three-dimensional. It is going to leave a mark on the plastic wherever it was connected, and that will show through on your masks. On opaque masks, it doesn't matter. But on transparent pieces, if you want to cast those, you're going to see the outline of where the tape once was. So my thought is, what if I could come up with a solution where I can basically dip the mask in a liquid to form a strong bubble in any of those holes, but also make it with a set of chemicals, mix up a set of chemicals that doesn't stick to silicone. The idea being that if a bubble can form in here that's strong, that can actually hold the silicone back and I can pour the silicone on top of it, where the silicone comes together, it can trap that bubble as a film in between. And then I can test and see in the future if it does bond at that point or if it separates. If it separates, which would be like an absolute holy grail, it would completely change the game when it comes to my book molds especially. But even for like two-part molds, it would be huge because it would mean that you could cast liquid silicone on top of liquid silicone and have it separate. You wouldn't have to wait for the first layer to cure. So if that works, that's a huge time saver, depending on the type of silicone that you use. So like I said, I'm definitely going to try to come up with something. I have enough of an understanding that I think I can do it, but it really just depends on if there's actually a chemical that satisfies all of my needs out there to do this. Because if there's not a chemical out there to do it, then there's obviously no reason to try, right? That said, I'm doing a mix of rubbing alcohol and dish liquid currently. Those are cheap enough that I can, use a little bit here and there. And yeah, so I'm running the tests right now. I took a layer of silicone. I dropped in the solution that I made, and then I poured more silicone on top. And so far, what I can tell is when you drop the solution in, it does go down into the silicone, which is obviously not ideal. But that just means in the future I'll have to manually put it in there. Not a huge deal. And then when I covered it with silicone, though, it did seem to actually entrap it. So I'm really going to cross my fingers that it's going to work. I will keep you guys posted on that one. It's a bit of a bigger undertaking in terms of an experiment, just because there are a lot more variables with it, and it's all liquid stuff at the end of the day. So that already has its own set of variables. But yeah, that's pretty much it on this one. I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was I'll have to clean the molds better just so that there's no infiltration of the little bits of resin from previous casts in there. I did blow these out, I did brush them out, but unfortunately some stuff still got into the Huna and the Rouse specifically. These larger molds seem to be a lot more prone to actually catching crap in there. The book molds seem to handle that a lot better. So really hoping to move on to book molds in the future. I think I'm going to modify the way that I do them if I can get all this stuff to work. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I'll see you all in the next one. Make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, my link's in the description below. I'm very tired. I'm going to go to sleep.